Good morning, guys, and welcome to the second look. It's a chance for us to take a comprehensive dissection of our last Cherries fixture, which on this occasion was a 1-0 loss at home versus Luton Town. This video forms part of a larger audio pod that's downloadable on your podcast app. So just search for Back of the Net Bournemouth on whichever app you use, and you should be able to find us and you can hear the whole shebang. So Boscombe weren't up to scratch versus the Hatters in Saturday's clash at Dean Court. Not a great showing, but there were some positive signs, but going down to 10 men certainly didn't help. To discuss it, I've got a podcast regular, by the way, of Jeff Hayward with me. Jeff, how are you?
Bit concerned.
And rightly so. Also, Tom Jordan's here as well. Tom, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. Just getting over it, mate. Just getting over it.
And also, Mr. Tiggs is here as well. The awesome foursome. Tiggs, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, that's good to hear because
I'm trying to be positive.
Yeah, exactly. It was a similar story to what we've experienced for large parts of the season. Bournemouth making hard work of the beautiful game against a team that is in the lower half of the table. Jeff, frustrating one yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, and lots of factors in that performance. The referee was obviously a big one, and I think generally we're all of a mindset that refereeing couldn't get any worse than it was last season, and hey presto, there is evidence that it is worse in the Championship. That refereeing performance yesterday was abject and arguably a huge factor in the game. At the same time, we're not convincing again.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And the referee's performance, we're going to come on to that. And I think it was a mixture because we can't just blame that, but it was a huge factor in things. A lot of people since then have been saying that VAR would be our saviour and that would have been overturned. Not so sure, because we all remember what happened with Adam Smith at Burnley, where they somehow found a way that he handballed it to overturn the fact that we would have equalised. Let's not talk about VAR, but it seems to be the people controlling the game both on screen and off screen that are causing so much pain for us. And yeah, that was an awful decision. We'll come on to that. Tom, have you quite got over it?
It was a really hard one to take, wasn't it? I think, Jeff summed up well. There are obviously a lot of underlying factors in the game, so it's difficult to dissect too much. I mean, if we look into the week as a whole, it's been really poor, and we weren't good enough against Millwall. But I think it's really difficult to look into it too much because you just don't know because of that decision. That makes it hard. We didn't start the game particularly well when we had 11, but you just don't know what would have happened. It obviously plays a real part. I think I saw Steve Cook's interview afterwards, and I thought he summed it up quite well, whereas he said, the 10 men was obviously a major factor in the game and we did work hard, but that is the minimum and we still didn't do enough. We've still got good enough players on the pitch, and I agree with him there. It is really difficult because whoever you're playing, if they've got an extra man for the majority, it's always going to be tough. But he made a good point. He said we still had 20 minutes where we didn't do enough, and you never know what's going to happen in football matches. So in that opening 20 minutes, if we had started brilliantly and been 2-0 up, we wouldn't be talking about the refereeing decision. So, underlying factors, but didn't quite do enough, did we, in the end? I felt we'd done enough to just get out of it with a 0-0, to be honest, but it is what it is.
So there's a lot to talk about, players to analyse and maybe managerial decisions as well with regards to formations, and also people questioning JT himself, which I'm sure we'll address later on. But let's go chronologically. It takes 2 p.m. when the teams were announced. Few surprises, a league debut for Carter Vickers, Jack Stacey was back, but to most people's, they saw the fact that we were playing 3 at the back, to most people's annoyance.
Yeah, you could say that. I think personnel, he obviously wanted to give Carter Vickers a run out for one, so I think personnel kind of made that decision for him. I think Tom called it earlier in the week, actually, that we would go with that formation and go with the fullbacks, rather wing backs rather than fullbacks. So I can understand it. It's what we've been working on. A bit like when we had Eddie. I think if Tyndall's found something that he likes, he's going to continue with it until he doesn't like it anymore. And although we weren't great against Millwall, the system itself, you can see why he's playing it. You can see what he's trying to get out of it. We won't always agree with it, but if he's working on it all week in training and he's got 2 fixtures close together, he's not maybe thinking that it'd be a good idea to change it all for another game.
Yeah, I think he was also kind of, don't get me wrong, he's obviously used it a lot of times, but I think it was going to be the last game where he was going to change it because of the fact that we had no Danjuma or Stanislas. He doesn't seem to trust Riquelme from the off yet, so we haven't really got many wide options when that's the case. So I always expect him to go wing backs. I think it's just a case of, you can talk about the system, but if we implement it the right way, 3 at the back's not always negative, but we've got to be playing the ball quicker. There's no point. I think a few people have alluded to it. When you're playing a team that are going to sit back, there's no point of having 3 centre halves. You just all knock it in between each other because they're just going to sit there and go on then. It's got to be more purpose to it. It's got to be quicker. I don't mind what formation you play, but there's got to be more tempo. And I think that's what's missing at the moment. We seem a little bit laboured, and predictable is probably the word I would have used for the 2 games of the week, particularly in the Millwall game as well.
And we've got defenders that could carry the ball as well.
Definitely.
I'd love to see more of that. I think when that lineup came out, I imagined maybe Carter Vickers, certainly Rico, bringing the ball forward more and then allowing for the overlap outside of them, or then you can switch it up and you can have that, Smith running down the wing, but then having somebody on the inside available to him and still knowing that there's 2 defenders behind him. So I think the formation, you can't pick holes in it if we're not using it, exactly as Tom said, in all the ways that we could. And I think there are more ways we could use it.
I think there are several flaws in the way that we're trying to play it. Both games this week showed that. The first problem is that with the wing backs have got to get behind the opposition and cross the ball into the box, and that has to happen. Instead, the wing backs yesterday and on Tuesday night, so much of what they're doing is in front of the back 5 of the opposition, which makes it easy. And then their delivery, when they get behind, isn't good enough. I'm losing track of the number of times that Rico is over hitting passes or just floating them in that's innocuous when we know he's so much better than that. Adam Smith, you cannot cut in all the time, cut back onto your right foot because it makes it easier. Right-footed cross into that box is easier to defend than a left-footed cross pulled back. Jack Stacey, it was his first game, so I'm giving him a bit of slack, but they've got to be better at playing that wing-back position. The second problem with it is when they do get the ball in, how many times in the last 2 games have the back 3 of the opposition been there blocking the cross, cutting it out before it gets even to the near post, let alone into the middle? And where's our players from the midfield flooding that penalty area to cause issues and offer options for the cross coming in? And I think the wing-back play at the moment isn't good enough to play 5 at the back. We're not creating enough.
I think that any team I've seen that are good at playing that system with the wing backs are their star players a lot of the time, and they're really pivotal to it. And I think the main problem at the moment is Stacey, like Jeff said, he's been very consistent. He's only just come back, but Smithy isn't finding form. And I do feel for him in the sense that he's gone from right to left. He doesn't know where he's coming to go, and he's not suited to playing on that left. But we don't trust Rico there. We're not really sure who else can play there. But we're putting players. If you want to play that system, the wing backs are so key. And I think our wing backs have been off it for a while now, and that's been a big issue. And like Jeff said, when you've got Adam Smith on that left wing back role, he's just going to come in inside every time, which I don't really blame him for. He's right-footed. He's been asked to do a job. They just squeeze the game in, so then you've just got nothing. And like Tig said earlier, if you're going to do that, Rico's got to be going round him then. You know what I mean? We've got to find a way, and it just feels like we're playing that system and just kind of seeing what happens. But yeah, it's frustrating at the moment.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, if we deploy people call it 5 at the back, and really it's 3 at the back. So it's actually more risky to play 3 at the back than 4, and it's more attacking to play 3 at the back. But the onus is more on our wing backs, than it ever would be, and it actually puts quite a lot of pressure on those two, to actually perform. I mean, Millwall, they kept pushing high very aggressively, and I think Rico he sort of kind of almost recoiled, and I think he's better as part of that three, and I was actually quite pleased to see Jason Tindall adopt that on a Saturday. And I wasn't unhappy with Smith being there because we know that he can attack, but that's not his natural side, and therefore he does. As Tom said, he tends to come in, and whereas it'd be nice to see the overlaps. And what it does do, I think, is when they don't push forward, it then exposes the midfield two like Cook and Lerma. And we saw like Millwall just walk through us at times. There were times where Luton did the same. And against Stoke City, people were saying, we're playing three at the back, but as the game went on, our wing backs pushed further and further up the pitch. Therefore, we did manage to get a bit of success from it. So, it's either that or we just maybe have to suck it up and play 4-4-2 or 4-3-3 or whatever, which under Eddie was horrible and rigid at times. But I think under Tindall, he seems to let the players express themselves a little bit more, and he doesn't overcoach like Howe does. So, I think I'd be quite happy with a 4 or 3. But anyway, regardless, let's get into what happened in the game. And it was an all right start, but we had a bit of a golden chance, Tom, on 6 minutes where a bit of a misplaced header back to the keeper from Berry, I think it was, nearly found Josh King. He just needed his feet to be that little bit longer, didn't he?
Yeah, I forgot about that one actually. Yeah, that was an early chance in it. When I was watching it live, I just kind of didn't think much of it. You see it back, you think, he could have done a little bit better there. It looked like a half chance, but really it was quite a big chance if he had read it a bit better. It's one of them when a defender makes a mistake. You almost need to be prepared that he's going to make that mistake. But I thought the early signs were Josh and Dom looked like they were causing a few problems, and I was quite liking it. I was thinking, this could be something. And yeah, obviously things that we'll go on to made that harder. But I wasn't exactly gutted with Josh's performance or thrilled. Do you know what I mean? But he was huffing and puffing, and what would be if he had just connected with that? We don't know what we'd be talking about now. An early goal would have been massive, but didn't happen. But yeah, that was probably the highlight of the early parts, wasn't it? That little kind of half chance there.
And teams like we've seen on some other channels, they've said that all they want to do is hang in there, and then they will try to hit us on the break at some point. And it's so crucial for us to score first because it changes the complexion of the whole game. And just if he had scored that, it would have made a difference. Now, Tom, just to confirm, what was happening yesterday? Was it 2 up top, or was it just the 1, or what? Because I wasn't sure.
I felt from the start I think the graphic from Bournemouth made it look like King was going to play wide, but I never thought that was going to be the case. And he was certainly close to Dom, so it did look like them two were together, and then Brooksy was kind of in a roaming role in and around them, with then the 2 central midfield players and the 3/5 at the back. But obviously it all kind of had to change a little bit with the sending off that we'll come on to. But yeah, I felt he was trying to get someone closer to Dom, which we missed in the week. We're asking Dom to do a lot, and I think it's important to get someone a bit closer to him. And I like the thought of Brooksy getting, being allowed to roam a little bit. Obviously it didn't work, but I could kind of see what we were trying to do there. But yeah, it just didn't quite happen. But it was nice to try and get someone closer to Dom. And obviously he went for King over Surridge on the day.
I think Luton were keeping things extremely tight, and over on the AFCB blog, they were saying that Nathan Jones was screaming to condense it nearly every time that Bournemouth had the ball, and they were limited really to sporadic balls down the channel, which invariably our defenders, stood up to the test. And then the game changed, Tiggs, 25, 26 minutes, in an incident that at the time didn't think anything of it, but the referee saw differently.
Yeah, I don't think the referee saw differently initially. I've watched it back a few times. He sort of saunters over there. Oh, what's going on? And I think maybe if the player was holding his face and that was it, I think maybe that referee probably would have given Lerma a yellow. I don't think it was even deserving of that, but I could see why he might do that. The sight of blood, the sight of red, brought forth a red, definitely. And because there were no Luton players running over to the ref to have a moan about it. There was nobody even looking to their player to see if he was all right. No. It was only when the referee went over there and saw what was going on. Then the physios were on the pitch, and the next minute, Lerma's cornered with the referee in front of him, giving him a red card, and everyone looked so confused. And we were all confused. I was listening to the commentary, and Chris Temple just could not believe it. It was baffling. But where were the assistant referees? Somebody must have had a better look at it than he did. There was no deliberation. It was just the red card was out. we have to move on.
Jeff, do you think it's a case of, the referee sees blood and he thinks, well, it has to have been bad because there's blood? I mean, I've got paper cuts before that produce blood, but that's not particularly a vicious thing.
Nasty paper cuts, they're nasty.
Yeah, they are nasty and painful. But what do you think the referee saw? Just the blood?
I think the pictures that I've seen of Lockyer, it looks bad, and I think that did influence the referee. Fundamentally, though, the foul should have been our foul because the Luton player makes a back for Lerma. He is not going to flail about like that unless he's unbalanced. He was unbalanced because he was being fouled by the Luton player. How the referee can then send him off is quite outrageous, I think Jason said, and quite agree with that. It's basic refereeing.
It is, but
I'm convinced it was because of the blood. Because I can't remember. Was it Eduardo for Arsenal that really bad injury years ago? Do you remember against Birmingham? And the tackle wasn't that bad, but as soon as the ref's gone over, he seen his ankle was like awful. It was awful, wasn't it? So he just done a red card because I guess the referee in the moment thinks, God, I must have missed something really serious here. I think Cookie said in his interview, he said that he took one in the face in the week against Millwall. He said, but there was no blood, so nothing was said about it. But the ref's probably gone over there and thought, I must have missed something. I mean, when I was watching it, I just assumed I'd missed something and Lerma had punched him off the ball. I didn't know what. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But it's definitely, I think if the ref was honest and come out, he'd say it was reactionary to seeing the blood and the player in a lot of pain, because I mean, it was just outrageous, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There's also, Sam, there's a backstory. Lerma's a marked man from officials because of the biting incident. He's a marked man because of all the yellows he ordinarily gets and because of some of the afters that he does give. Yeah, he's a marked man. And I think EFL referees have all got together and said, watch him, any suspicion, card him, because he's a dirty player.
That was his first straight red as well. That's his first straight red.
I can't believe that.
If he gets a red card again, I'm expecting it for committing murder, because there needs to be some kind of balance to it. They just don't understand.
Jeff makes a good point though, because sometimes you see it. If Zaha gets fouled, for example, he's often booked for diving more than other players because refs are kind of on that. They're thinking, Zaha's known for that. And I do think that was the case. It would have been interesting if that was, say, Lewis Cook. With the it's definitely a point. I think you see that a lot, don't you, when a player's kind of known to be a bit like that. But I felt for Jeff because he does make some horrible tackles and he does something like that and he gets sent off.
So at that point, I was wondering what was going to happen. But if there was any doubt that we were playing two up top at the start, then there wasn't after David Brooks got moved back into centre midfield. And ironically, Tiggs, it was we were playing freer football, and you wouldn't have known if you just glanced over at that match, and you wouldn't be counting the players. You wouldn't know that we had a man down, and we were the better side for the rest of the half. I thought we were really good.
Yeah, we were excellent, really, for quite a long period there, and we had a chance as well, which was wonderful. And I think, like Tom said earlier about King, in a kind of a indifference in his game for yesterday, but at the end of the day, I think if he was a little bit sharper, a couple more games under his belt, and we could have been a couple of goals up, actually.
All right, so there are a couple of chances that spring to mind, or a couple of chances where we maybe should have got a shot away a little bit earlier, perhaps. So on 42 minutes, I think Dom Solanke did brilliantly down the right to win the ball. He evaded his marker, and then he set up Jack Stacey, who he could have had a shot on his left but didn't. And then he looked at playing King with the short pass in the penalty area, which is the most congested area of the pitch. And I found quite often we're trying to do that quite a bit. Now, Tom may think differently about this given our scoring rate in previous matches. But Jeff, I'll come to you on this. Are we trying to walk it in too much? Yeah,
I think there's a number of things going on with our creativity, and it's a mental attitude we've got. I think we go into games like we did yesterday and Tuesday, and we think we're better than that lot. We're going to beat them because of our quality of our football. And I think what that does is that breeds a bit of complacency, that we think, you know what, we can just walk it in against these players, and that doesn't happen because the opposition invariably sense that we're better than they are. They know they are. I mean, if you read Nathan Jones's comments after the game yesterday, he said we needed a break because they're brilliant players. They should be playing in the Premier League. We got a break. and I think that affects us because we think we're too good for the opposition, and it's almost like we do overplay it. We fail to see the obvious pass and try and do something a bit more extravagant or complicated and it's really painful to watch. Some of the times yesterday, Tuesday night, was the same, where we're not choosing to get the ball into the box early. We'll pass it about a bit more on the edge of the penalty area and try and get an even better opportunity, or we will try and walk it in, and it's not working. And I think the mental attitude needs to change. And actually, it was a bit better yesterday because I think down to 10 men, players almost changed their mental attitude and thought, well, we're going to have to really put a shift in to win this game. We're going to have to really play our socks off rather than think we're going to walk it because the opposition will get tired.
It didn't feel like the shots rained in yesterday, though. So looking at the halftime stats, it seemed that we were way ahead on that front. I mean, one thing I think was really positive, and Tom, will come to you about that kind of walking in thing that I said. I thought King and Solanke actually looked as though they were linking up really well. I think on around 44 minutes or so, just before the halftime whistle. Well, I think we had about 5 minutes injury time, so it was about 5 minutes before the ref blew up for halftime. They linked up really well, some good 1-2s, nearly formed a chance, but Josh King tried to square it back. It was a bit too near the keeper, and yeah, the sending off it forced us into a better shape. And all over the pitch, I thought we were really good, but I'll come back to that walking in thing, Tom, because you don't subscribe to that theory that we're trying to do that.
I think it's just, I appreciate what Jeff's trying to say as well. I think there is definitely a part of, in that terms of we feel like, I don't think it's as much as arrogance as we feel like we can just turn up and win games. But I think if you remember back to the start of the season, we went on that run without losing, the longest in the country or whatever. And there were a lot of them games. We weren't that good. But it did feel like we were just too good for the opposition. I remember the Bristol City game, for example. We were pretty rubbish, but then we just went, Danjuma goal. So it's almost like they've been backed up in thinking that, because we have been pretty poor in games, and then we have got away with it because of our quality. So I think that's probably something that's maybe there subconsciously, potentially. I certainly think yesterday there were a few times we were overplaying it. I do, yeah, what I was saying yesterday on the free-for-all and stuff as well is, yeah, we probably have done this week, I would say. But on the whole, I think it's a little bit too much to say that we try and walk it in when we've scored more than Norwich, for example, who are top of the league by a fair way. Well, they're not trying to walk it in, are they? We've scored more than them. So I think looking in the grand scheme of things, I don't think we always are. I wonder sometimes if they think, like what Jeff said about us kind of having better players in the opposition, we think, well, their centre-halves, they're going to be good at just heading balls away. So we don't want to just chuck balls in the box because that's going to be their bread and butter. Maybe we need to be a bit cleverer because they're not as good players. And we almost overdo it a little bit. They were definitely, yesterday surprised me in the sense that we knew we had less players, need to get some more shots off, needed to be a little bit more basic with it. And just do the basics right. You've got 10 men, just do the basics right, get some shots off, get some balls in the box. And we were overthinking it a little bit. It's a real shame because I remember when we went up, when we won the league, I remember a game at Bolton when we went down to 10 men and we were level. I think Kermigan got sent off and we won that game, and that was like the catalyst. And it looked like that when we first got the red card. I thought, now they look like they're really fighting for each other, backs to the wall. We've gone down to 10 men. But like Jeff said, all we needed was to just be a little bit more clinical. With one of them chances, we could have gone ahead, and I think we could have seen it out. But I certainly can't disagree that we were overplaying it yesterday. There's no doubt about that, definitely.
One other thing to add, at the same time as I think we're guilty of a bit of complacency or whatever you want to call it, knowing that we're better quality than the opposition. At the same time, we've got a lack of form and a lack of confidence that I think is coming into the team. For example, Stacey not shooting on his left foot. Do you think that would have happened in the first few games of the season? Because when was the last time we scored from 20 yards out? Like we were pinging them in for those first 10 games, weren't we? And we don't seem to want to get shots off. And when we do get shots off, we're skying everything at the moment. I mean, everything seems to focus around, unless Dom scores or Junior scores, and Junior ain't going to score because he's injured for the next 6 to 8 weeks. Who's going to stick the ball in the net for us?
It's weird as well because I always look at teams that try and walk it in. Say Man City's teams like that get told. It's normally because they're overconfident, because they're playing really well. They try to get the perfect goal. So it almost seems like in reverse. Do you know what I mean? You'd think a team that potentially, aren't winning games, aren't on a great run of form, the last thing they're going to do is overcomplicate it. So it is quite a bizarre one. But
I wonder if it's the style that we've manufactured. So we get a lot of possession. Yeah. So maybe the message that's being sent to the players is keep the ball or score. And so we've maybe got a lack of people who want to take the responsibility to try and score. You've got Arnaut Danjuma on the pitch. He's always going to take the responsibility. He's always going to have a go. He's going to see, oh, wait a minute, if I score now, this is going to change the game. And at the beginning of the season, all of our goals were, Jeff said, they were incredible goals. I mean, a lot of our goals that we scored up until sort of November were brilliant. I mean, they really were. And you look at them and you think, wow, how are you scoring from that far out? And now we're not scoring those sorts of goals. So maybe it's a case of the personnel that are on the pitch. There's nobody there that actually, they also want to keep the ball. They're about creating the chances, but maybe there are not many players who are willing to take a pot shot and take those kind of less percentage-driven chances.
I think Brooksy's got issues as well with his form. We're relying on him as the guy to unpick the opposition defence, and so many times yesterday and Tuesday, misplaced passes, either too much or too little on it. Not seeing the obvious pass, trying to do something a bit more complicated. It's not quite working, and I don't want to single him out because there's a lack of taking responsibility for that creative edge from the midfield to, go forward, have a go, shoot, do something that's not square ball to the wing, square ball back, square ball to the wing, square ball back sort of stuff.
You'd think that not having fans in the stadium would give players more of a license to take pot shots because there's not the crowd to get on their back after they shoot from 30, 35 yards or whatever. But seemingly, yeah, it's just not the done thing at the moment. And anyway, let's get into the second half. And I've got to say, Luton, we're going to come on to talk about these guys because I thought they were quite impressive. And there were a few comments on the free-for-all from some of our supporters that I don't think they meant it intentionally to deride the Hatters. However, the hashtag teams like Luton is something that they seem to come across quite often. But, you've got to say teams like Luton, QPR, Derby, Preston, Rotherham that we played this season are teams that I feel as though we should have got more against. But we'll come on to that and we'll give them the rightful praise that they deserve. In fact, I'll give them it now because they started the second half really well. I thought on 47 minutes, Rico, he conceded a needless free kick after Steve Cook cleared up at the back. And then they earned a free kick, which was crossed over. And there was a slight touch that met Berry at the far post. And he had time to get the ball down and take a shot. And Asmir Begovic, Tom, my God, what a spell of 2-3 minutes he had there. Showed his class there, didn't he?
Yeah, he is. And he's just, I'm running out of things to say for him at the end of the day. He's every single game. He's just, he's there to make saves, isn't he? But he's doing it every single, without fail. He's been unbelievable. Deserves an enormous amount of credit as well. And I think he's someone that him and Steve Cook in particular, they're the kind of leaders, and they're leading by example at the moment. Them two, and it's the more creative players need to step up. But yeah, Begovic, it was like you say, it was like a real spell where it just looked like he's never going to get beaten at it. And I always felt like he definitely deserved the clean sheet, didn't he? But unbelievable, and he's doing it every single game without fail, isn't he? So just run out of words to say for him.
It's quite interesting that obviously Kirk and yourself have been chatting over Twitter with regards to Asmir Begovic getting man of the match, and some supporters are almost turning it into a negative. They're not intentionally, but they're just coming across with the argument like he shouldn't be man of the match every week because he seems to be mainly keeping us in games. But then look back last season, and I'm sure that Aaron Ramsdale got a number of man of the match performances. I'm not sure. Yeah, player of the season, exactly. And look where that left us. But anyway, that's a point to make on another occasion, I'm sure. But one thing I was noticing, Tiggs, was that the quality of crossing from the Hatters was so much better than what ours was. The amount of times I saw these looped crosses from Rico and from the other flank, whereas theirs were really direct. And that one chance that resulted in that shot which was saved. And then, Begovic then came in and saved again really quickly with his legs, and then top left-hand corner it was destined for. Their delivery was just so much better. And that's one thing that I feel we really miss at the moment from wide.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff said it earlier. It's not what our wide players do. It seems they don't deliver a direct ball. I don't know why it's always looped over to the far post. I guess we're trying to spread the play, but when you're so close to their goal, why are we doing that? Not really sure. Going back on the Begovic thing, really interesting. I was thinking about this, and I understand where Kirk was coming from, and that you don't want your goalkeeper being your man of the match. You want your striker being your man of the match. But we don't know what would have happened in that game if Begovic let that goal in. If Begovic had let that chance in, we might have gone and scored 3. Goals change games. They can sink you or they can float you to the top, can't they? And you just don't know. So where he's getting man of the match, he's getting man of the match because he's doing his job well. He's doing it really, really well. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't be doing well without him. We just don't know. It's butterflies, isn't it? Who knows what's going to happen.
I think there's a stat, Jeff, that Dom Solanke has not scored a brace since 2015, and I tell you what, he was close to doing so. Some good link-up work with Josh King on around 53 minutes, and he looked to shoot towards goal before that sliding tackle from Potts came in. I honestly thought that was it, didn't you?
Yeah, I thought it was in. Good defending, and Dom is a good player, but what he needs, we shouldn't look at him as being the problem. We've got to give him more chances in the game, because that was his one effort. He had that one clear effort on goal yesterday. Josh King had a couple, and we've got to do better than that. We had 4 shots on target in a game against Luton, which I think teams like Luton are always going to play that defensive block setup. But what they do have typically is they have one decent player, and Luton's was Dewsbury Hall yesterday. Yeah. I thought he was outstanding. Actually when they 0-0'd us a few weeks ago. They seem to offer what we are missing. His distribution was fantastic throughout that game. Whenever they got the ball, he was terrific and scored a terrific goal too, I thought. And actually, that's where we missed Lerma, because Lewis Cook was faced with 2 midfielders and should have been tracking them both, but he couldn't. And Brooks was 5 yards behind Dewsbury Hall, so didn't pick him up.
And that Solanke chance wasn't typically the type of chance that we've been trying to create through the game. It was more of a break, wasn't it? It was King. Yeah. So how do we score goals? Actually, we score goals in a way that is not the way we've been playing football.
so the way that we're scoring goals at the moment seems to be Lewis Cook, long ball, David Brooks, long ball, over the top, somebody running in behind. That's how we're scoring goals. And I think teams have seen that the last few games and are now figured that out. So we've got to come up with other creative plans than that.
Yeah. Now, as you said, Dewsbury Hall made it 1-0. Harry Cornick really had a big chance. He ran through on goal and blazed a shot with his left foot over the bar, and he was unlucky to put the Hats 1-0 up. But then on 66 minutes, Dewsbury Hall, he cut inside, and it was a great left-footed effort, curl past Begovic. And that's when JT made the changes then. So Josh King was off, Sam was on, Rico was off, Kelly was on, Stacey was off, and Billing was on as well. And then we also had I think Roro and Anstey that came on a little bit later. And, there were sort of isolated attacks. I think we had that chance from Roro, who hit it first time. Lloyd Kelly actually pinging a ball into the box with a whip. It wasn't a high one, but it was a fast one where the striker or midfielder didn't have to generate his own power. It merely deflected off Roro's side foot, and forced a save from the keeper. I think it was actually probably more comfortable than we all thought at the time. And the game very much petered out, and we're sat here frustrated at dropping points yet again, Tom, at a team who we were looking at thinking, this is a team where we can have a run, like Preston, QPR, Derby, and more. It's frustrating.
Yeah, we've got to be careful, haven't we? You alluded to it earlier with teams like Luton or whatever. It's always going to have a bit of that because of the quality of players we've got. I certainly didn't like it when we won the league, when people would say, you know what I mean, about us not being a big club. Teams would, but we've got to cope with that. And at the end of the day, I think Jeff said it spot on, that these teams, they have a game plan. And I think what Luton deserve credit for is they didn't alleviate from that game plan when we went down to 10. They could have easily started chasing it, thinking, oh, we could win this, and would have left gaps. But they didn't. They kept with their game plan and tried to nick something. And that's what they managed to do. I think teams are, like we mentioned about that kind of ball over the top, teams are learning from that. They're just dropping deep, not giving us that space to get in behind as much. And it's going to happen. I think I always think about how tough it is to watch England sometimes when they play against teams like Estonia and things like that, because they have game plans. England have got far better players, but it's always a slog because these teams have got game plans, and that's where you earn. That's where JT will earn his money. That's where the players earn their money, because that's when you've got to think of new ideas. And I think sometimes we have, just like we've spoke about, when we get the ball wide, we've got to just chuck the ball in. Sometimes we've got to be a little bit more direct, not coming inside all the time. Try and be so acute with it. Let's be a bit more direct. Let's get it up them a little bit, especially early on in the game. And in terms of going back to the system and things like that, why can't we go for it from the off, start positive, be a bit direct, and then if we get the goal, then maybe chuck one of the centre halves in there, go to a back three, and let's make it difficult again and see the game out. That's absolutely fine with me. But yeah, I'd like us to be a little bit more direct with it, a little bit more take the game to the opposition, rather than letting them get into their shape and find the feel to the game. And that's what it seems to have been lately. But Luton still deserve credit for their game plan, in my opinion, definitely.
You said in that bit there, you said that's how JT earns his money. Jeff, is JT earning his money at the moment?
He's going to have to. Next few games are really critical. Completely get what Tommy is saying, and I'd love to see that too. The issue we've got now is that the players are feeling pressure, because they're feeling pressure thinking we're losing touch with the top two, we've got to win games. And this squad of players, when they were under pressure last season, invariably they played more conservatively than forward looking. And I think this is what JT's got to change. And it was noticeable, I think, that Begovic kept us in the game yesterday. He's been man of the match for the last few games, I think. And what does Begovic do? Well, I mean, when there's a one-on-one, you never think he's going to get beaten. You think he's going to pull off those outstanding saves. So let's start using that as a brave piece of defending. Go to the back four, because we know Beggs is pretty much unbeatable, right? It's like our fifth defender, but he plays in goal. So play the back four, play a more forward-thinking, less conservative game, because we've got the best goalkeeper in the division behind us. He'll keep us in the game, and just go for it a bit more. Be braver, because we are going to struggle to win games only scoring one goal.
I think you're from the same PR school as Matt Hancock, Jeff, because I asked you, is JT earning his corn? And you answered, he's going to have to. Not actually answering the question. So, Tix, I'll come to you. What's your opinion?
Do you know what the most interesting thing for me, and I'm not trying to cause any kind of division in the ranks here, but after the game, they interviewed Tyndall and they interviewed Cook. And Tyndall said, we had, if the Lerma sending off hadn't happened, we would have won the game. We had 64% of possession. We had 13 shots. And then they interviewed Cook. And Cook went, yeah, we weren't good enough. We hardly tested their keeper. I'm the captain of this team, and I personally feel responsible for our failure, and I don't want the same kind of thing as last year. So you've got two different messages coming from, and I know that you've got to be positive, and I know that's what I love about Steve Cook. He wears his heart on his sleeve, but there is a problem here, and the problem is that we are just not quite clicking. And I think January is the biggest month, and I'm probably going to say this in February as well, aren't I? But at the moment, January is the biggest month. If we don't get 6 points from the next two, I'm not saying anything about anyone losing their job or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, we know that Maxim Demin. Well, we don't know this, but my opinion of Maxim Demin is that he wants Premier League football. Yeah. There's going to be a point at which, if we did slide down and we ended up, 7th, 8th, something like that, that he's going to lose his patience and want something quick, because we are going to lose the players that we've got if we had to do another season in the Championship.
Yeah, I get the feeling it's sort of, this season or bust. I'm sure it's not the case, but it feels that way as a supporter. So you're talking about it's nice to see players that care, and Steve Cook came out and said the right things. And anyone see the tweet from Arnaud Danjuma? Tom, did you see it?
Yeah. Jeff? Yeah, it was a nice one. But I don't want to be too, what's the word? I do sometimes think that I wonder if a manager kind of goes, look, I'll go and talk about the game, big up my players, because I want to keep the players' confidence up. Cookie, when you do your interview, you're the skipper, go out there, act like we weren't good enough, tell the fans what the fans want to hear. Do you know what I mean? I do wonder a little bit because that's what the fans want to hear is exactly what Cookie said. I do wonder a bit, but that's not a bad thing. I get why they would want to do that, but I do sometimes think, was that a little bit, kind of Cookie knew what he was going to go out and say. But regardless, it was I still always trust people. Like at the end of the day, I think Cookie, Begovic, some of our kind of more experienced players have been pretty consistent for us. I think they're leading by example. It's some of the other players. I think Jeff alluded to it earlier, which was a good point about kind of Brooksy overplaying things. I wonder if sometimes, I don't know if you guys agree, if he's almost feeling that burden a little bit. He's feeling that I am the main man here. Because every time he gets it, I think, why are you taking that extra touch? Why are you It's like he thinks I've got to do everything. I do feel like that a little bit. The more every game's gone on, I feel like he's feeling that pressure on him a little bit. He's not playing with like that freedom that he used to. He seems like he's carrying a bit of it, in my opinion. So, we're not seeing the best out of him because of that. And I also think opposition are targeting Brooksy very well recently as well.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see the two best crossers from the wings, from the fullbacks in position at the moment. Got to say that's Kelly, best left-footed crosser we got on that side when he's not turning the ball back and playing it back all the time. And it's Stacey. So you've got to play those two in that sort of wing back or fullback position, getting forward. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I feel happier with Phil Bill in that midfield.
Oh, Jeff!
Yeah, I know. Where's the humble pie? I think it's got to be Phil Bill. It's got to be Lewis and Lerma if he's available. But we need that sort of core three. Then you just play Brooks and then Solanke.
Well,
Sam, you've got to have a Jeff kind of like having a go at Bill in montage that we can get up.
I'm certainly going to sort that. And, like I alluded to, Jeff, with Arnaud Danjuma, a player that that's another flair player like David Brooks, but someone who has produced many a time this season already. And he looks as if he's up for the fight when he's back. And his arrival can't come soon enough, can it?
Yeah. Danjuma and Solanke, or Surridge and Solanke, or King and Solanke, I think up top gives us enough goals, but we just got to get that momentum going in the right direction, and it's a mental thing as much as anything at the moment.
Brilliant. Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to have you on today. Much appreciated. Tiggs, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, buddy. Adios.
Jeff, once again, it's been a pleasure.
Can't wait for Tuesday.
Can't wait. And Tom Jordan, thanks very much.
Cheers, boss.
And remember, if you want to hear more from where this came from, all this audio is available on the downloadable podcast. So download it now on your podcast app. Whilst you're here, if you give us a thumbs up on YouTube as well, that would be much appreciated. Until the next video, and it's coming very soon, later on today, in fact, with an opposition preview. See you there. Got the Cherries.